ET now. First things first, even though this is part of the annual India-Russia summit, but what makes this visit particularly different is the fact that this is one of the very few international visits that President Putin has made. How high are the stakes for Russia and India, both in the backdrop of a very, very turbulent world? And what are the key outcomes that you're expecting when both the sides meet?
Well, if you're saying how high are the stakes, I don't think the stakes are that high because it's a long-standing, a deep-rooted, a multifaceted relationship, and we know each other very well. It's a trust-based relationship. So it's not that any side is expecting a surprise. And the fact that it is a state visit also shows that we're going to receive our foreign guests from Russia with the due pomp and honors. So I expect that it'll be a great visit. I think there'll be satisfaction on both sides with the outcome. And it's also an assertion of our strategic autonomy, showing that, our decisions are based on our national interest and are not subject to external pressures. So if there's any needed requirement for us to affirm that we have an independent and pragmatic foreign policy, well, this is it. A visit by a dear friend who we are happy to welcome.
Absolutely, Ambassador Malhotra, and this definitely does send out a very strong signaling of India and Russia's very strong time-tested ties. But how will India balance its energy interests with both the United States and Russia? There's been a reduction in oil purchase by Indian companies from the Russian Federation on the back of oil tariffs which have been imposed by the United States. Do you see the energy issue particularly, will that be brought up when the President meets with the Prime Minister? And second part of this question is, how will India balance its interests, its energy interests in this regard, given the fact that there is pressure from the United States as well?
Well, our interests are our interests. They are our national interests. That has to get precedence over everyone else's interests, including that of USA, who are actually a bystander when two friends meet. And in this case, yes, we would take into account the tariffs that they are threatening to impose and have imposed, and the sanctions that they're talking about. But all these make us wonder, what kind of friend is this with whom we have, after all, signed a comprehensive global strategic partnership too, between India and the USA, that they're talking about tariff sanctions, visa problems and that kind of thing. So I would look at this really, if I look at the oil part of it, I don't think we need to be concerned to that extent as a country. We need to import from wherever we get the best price, and that is really what the logic of our national interest demands. But having said that, our private companies would no doubt feel the pressure of US sanctions, which are incidentally unilateral sanctions, are not kind of approved by WTO or have the blessings of WTO. And simply because they also have interests in USA and would like to continue with having access to their partners in USA. Our PSUs also have good partners in USA. Our companies avail of huge cooperation opportunities there in R&D, in deep sea drilling, etc. So they also won't want to lose those opportunities. So that's where we are at the moment. But I don't think everyone will be looking at it saying, oh, the Americans have put this and therefore we need to do this or that. We are two big mature countries. We know how to handle these deals. And we don't need to look at it in the context of any third party or third country putting pressure on us.
Absolutely, Ambassador. And this is something that Mr. Peskov stated yesterday, that we perhaps need to work out a mechanism between India and Russia to sort of, to make sure that there is no impact of any third countries. I'm given to understand that Ambassador Meera Shankar, who's a former ambassador to the United States and Germany, is also joining us on this special broadcast. Thank you, Ambassador Shankar, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now. Let me get in your thoughts on this particular visit. Now, Ambassador Shankar, even though government sources have told now that this visit should not be looked at from the lens of being a bilateral summit, a bilateral visit. But the fact remains that the timing of this visit cannot be ignored. We do have Trump's tariffs and sanctions on Russian entities. And of course, India continues to face those 50% tariffs by the United States. So how is the United States likely to look at this upcoming visit and, of course, the meeting between the two leaders?
Well, the U.S. itself is seeking a peace deal on Ukraine and has been meeting with Russia. The talks, in fact, with Russia had gone well, and then there was a pushback from the Europeans and Ukraine on the 28-point peace plan, which President Trump had unveiled. And in the wake of the consultations with Europe and Ukraine, some modifications have been made to that, and fresh talks are going on with between Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and the Russians. So it's not as though the U.S. is not in itself engaged in outreach to Russia. Also, U.S. oil companies are looking out for the opportunity to actually invest in Russia's resources. And if you take a look at the U.S. peace plan, then that 28-point peace plan, we don't know how much of it survives. But in that, the U.S. proposes that Russia's frozen assets, about $300 billion of which have been frozen by the Europeans, will be used. $100 billion will be given to the U.S. for rebuilding of Ukraine, and the remainder will be used for joint U.S.-Russian investments, and the U.S. will get a share of the profits. So the U.S. is already looking beyond the possibility of a peace deal to actually re-engaging with Russia economically, the gradual lifting of sanctions, and reintegration of Russia into the G8. So it's a little bit, what could I say, inexplicable as to why then the U.S. would keep sanctions on India for import of Russian oil. But I think as far as India is concerned, I think it's important for us to create our own space in terms of the global balance of power. And for that, we can't be dependent on one country. We have to have multiple partners. And Russia has proven a very steady partner over the years, particularly in the field of defense, nuclear energy, space. Yes, the economic relationship has been thin. After the end of the rupee-ruble trade, the economic relationship between India and Russia collapsed, actually. And we have been trying to rebuild it, but it hasn't really gone far. Russia today doesn't really look at India to that extent. It looks at Europe, China, and the U.S. But given that the U.S. and Europe have proved somewhat fickle in terms of how they have handled their own ties with Russia, leading to conflict in Ukraine, that Russia would also be looking now perhaps more seriously at India. And certainly India should be looking more seriously at Russia, given the fact that there are tensions in our relationship with the U.S., which has proved unreliable. And rebuilding that trust is going to take time. But also because our relationship with China, the other great power, are also not on an even keel, because there are tensions on the border. And Europe, in a sense, takes the lead from the U.S. So I think it's important for India to balance its relations with the great powers by creating space for itself through multiple engagements and through diversifying its economy. economic relationship.
Absolutely, Ambassador Shankar, you touched upon a very important perspective, important point about Russia, India, China, that bloc, and I'll come to that in just a bit. But let me go across to Ambassador Malhotra. Now, defense, of course, we've been speaking about over the past couple of days, is one side of this partnership that could be looked at seriously at this visit. There could be talks around defense, but India is looking at a diversified approach and now buys from US and France as well. However, when it comes to the trade deficit between the two countries, this is widened. How do you think the two sides are going to address that particular issue? Can we expect any concrete commitments as to from Russia in terms of what is it that it could perhaps look at importing from India? What are the key sectors do you think that will dominate these trade-related discussions? And are you looking at any firm commitments that will be made from the Russian side?
Well, since you mentioned defense in the trade statistics context, let me clarify that defense trade does not show up in trade statistics. Nor does trade in earlier, which we used to get through our investments in Russia into oil and gas, because these come in, they're traded on the high seas, and so they don't show up in our figures. Nor do the diamonds that we get via Jerusalem and Brussels, for example, and which Russia is the #1 supplier. So if you look at those figures, and these go on to USA then and show up huge in our trade figures up there, after all, they're only extra processed in Surat. So if you look at trade figures, one has to bear that perspective in mind. Nevertheless, neither Russia nor India is a major trading country. We are not like China or Germany. You know, we have very limited capabilities in that direction for the size of our countries. But there are huge opportunities. And I think the bad policies being pursued by the Europeans are opening this up for us further. And there were mention of, agricultural products. Yes, shrimp would be hugely popular. In Russia, they do like high quality seafood. So shrimp, gherkins, potatoes, pomegranates, all of those agricultural products have a great opportunity there. And things that we have been denied due to the American tariffs, I think we should look at exporting them to Russia and elsewhere. For example, the Tirupur, the textiles and hosiery from Tirupur, or even if you look at items of Surat, some of the jewelry items that are made there. So there are many opportunities that open up, and I'm sure they'll be looking at it, because right now it's a lopsided trade. It is us getting a lot of oil and gas, and which is very advantageous to us. So let's not, trade meets the interests of both the buyer and the seller. Very often people overanalyze and interpret that, oh, it's one-sided, etc. But we are buying it because it's good for us.
Right.
We are saving a lot of money. And we export about $5 billion worth. And that can go up in a big manner. And there are opportunities out there to look at things. We have identified the sectors. And we're also looking at manpower positioning out there as a new area of interest.
Absolutely. And Ambassador Malhotra, we're given to understand that, there's going to be an interaction with business leaders as well, with importers as well. But remains to be seen whether there will be any concrete commitments that Russia is ready to make. Mr. Peskov did speak about the fact that Russia understands India's concerns with respect to this trade deficit. So how Russia really offers to bridge that remains to be seen. Ambassador Shankar, let me come to you. Now, President Putin is elevating its relationship with New Delhi to the same level as Beijing. Mr. Peskov also stated yesterday that Russia wants a no-limits partnership with India, just like with China. What does this mean for India, and does this further consolidate the RIC bloc? Do you see any kind of concerns on the Indian side on that matter?
I think on the Indian side, we would have to look at how we navigate the relationship with Russia in a way that it doesn't further damage our relationship with the US or Europe. You would need to keep both in mind. But as I said, at the same time, this is an opportunity to look at how we can provide more substance to the relationship with Russia, which, has become somewhat thin on the economic side. And even on the defense side, after the S-400s, we really haven't placed many orders. And the advantage I think that Russia offers in terms of technology is that it is robust, and they are also willing to share the full technology with us in terms of technology collaborations for subsequent defense manufacturing within India, as they have done in the past. And that was one of the main reasons why we shifted towards Russia, because the US during the Cold War was not willing to sell us arms, or not willing to license production, not willing to give us guarantees on spares, not willing to have full technology collaboration. So Russia was the one country which offered it to us, and they are still willing to do that. So that provides us certain, what could I say,
Right.
stability of supplies. You know, it's not that somebody can cut them off
Absolutely.
in the future. And I think that's important to see where we can go. Nuclear energy has been the other field where Russia has been the only foreign partner with whom
Right.
actual nuclear energy collaboration has taken off. You know, France and US both had their own problems.
Right.
They were too expensive in terms of the Indian market, and the delivered product didn't match the demands of the Indian market. It was too high cost. And Russia's was the only one which really fit the bill. So here's another opportunity to look at nuclear energy, because beyond, you know, fossil fuels, if we are to look at renewable energy
Right.
economy in future, then we need a stabilizing base power, and that can be either thermal or hydro or nuclear. And thermal, we should not then put new plants up, because we have to phase out the existing ones if we want to achieve net zero. So nuclear really provides that stabilizing factor. And I think that would be an interesting area to
Right, ma'am.
see where we could go. Space is the third place where we have worked with Russia.
Right.
You know, our cryogenic engine for the
Right.
geostationary orbit missiles really came from Russia initially, and then subsequently the technology collaboration also came from them. And now we have our own
Absolutely.
cryogenic engine.
Absolutely.
So there are areas where we can work together with
We
Russia,
do.
but as far as the oil trade deficit is concerned, it really doesn't matter, because we'd have that same trade deficit with some other oil exporting country, you know, because we are buying something which
Right.
is an essential for the Indian economy. It's not an optional import. So if you don't get it
Right,
from
ma'am.
Russia, you get it from somewhere else. And if you're getting it cheaper from Russia, it actually helps you.
Right, Ambassador Shankar, it's completely dependent on market dynamics, is what sources have told ET now just last night. But we have time for just one final question. I'll take that question to you, Ambassador Malhotra. Now, since we're talking about India, Russia, and the United States, I have to ask you about the India-U.S. deal. Both the sides were looking at completing at least the first tranche by fall this year. Do you think a package is likely this year? Will there be an acceleration of talks between both the sides once the ambassador designate to India, Sergio Gore, assumes charge? Or is there an understanding that's now developing in India that perhaps, we'll wait for the Supreme Court's order on Trump's unilateral sanctions, given the fact that Supreme Court in the United States has called them illegal? What do you think is happening, and how soon do you think that package deal that India and the United States are looking at could be closed?
Is this to me or to Meera?
Yes, Ambassador Malhotra, it's to you.
Yeah, so you're talking of the India-U.S., the U.S. ambassador who's being sent here, Sergio Gore. Yeah, well, let's see, because yes, as you pointed out, Supreme Court has to take a view. And if you look at our relations, I think, the Americans need to think a little more deeply about what they're doing in the relationship with India. You have put tariffs, and you're a country who's saying, oh, everyone has high tariffs, and now the highest tariffs you have, you put on us. And you call us your comprehensive strategic partner. And then you put sanctions, and then you've created problems for our H-1B visa holders. And then more than that, you've, palled up with Pakistan, our troublesome neighbor. So we will have to look at all of those things also. And we will have to see with what message the American ambassador pushes issues up here. And we were planning to have a Quad summit out here. We are looking to a visit by Trump. So
Right.
I think, as has been pointed out, if this issue between USA and Russia gets increasingly sorted out, then things will again fall back into a normal situation. I believe the tariff issue will get sorted out through our bilateral negotiations. The sanctions will get removed.
Absolutely.
The H-1B visa has already calmed down. And as long as they keep Pakistan in its place, I mean, the hub being given to the so-called field marshal
Absolutely.
is really something that is worrisome for us. That is a troublesome neighbor, and we are concerned that USA is not appreciative
Right.
of that. So that is something we will be raising with them also.
Right.
Our foreign policy is multi-aligned.
Absolutely, Ambassador.
We want to push each in the direction as far as
Right.
we can, in a very positive sense, and we want good friendship with USA and with Russia.
Right. Absolutely, Ambassador, and we do hope that some of those issues will get sorted out, given the fact that now things are moving as far as a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine is concerned. But on that note, thank you very much to both of you, Ambassador Shankar and Ambassador Malhotra, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now on this very crucial story. We do hope to have you back on the show, on the channel tomorrow as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to wrap this edition of the show, this special show. But do stay tuned for a continuous coverage of President Putin's India visit.